Thank you. You'll observe that the main thing I got from Princeton University was a Halloween costume. And certain of my kids have actually worn this very garment for the purpose. Commencement addresses are, at least in some respects, a lot like love letters. As a character in Lawrence Durrell's Alexandria Quartet remarks of love letters, no matter how good you are, after about 6, you're out of material. Listeners, too, are likely to have this feeling about such things because after about 6 commencement addresses, they have about heard all there is to say on the subject. Here we must extend our sympathetic greetings to the faculty, who over an entire academic career may get to hear 40 or so. But some things do bear repeating, after all. And as all of you who are devoted to making and studying art know, traditional formulas need not always be rejected, but may instead themselves evoke inspiration. The traditional formula for the commencement address begins with a salutation. It then proceeds to a recitation of what it is hoped the graduates will have accumulated in their young lives and in their altogether brief stay in this institution. It will then move effortlessly through an exploration of the etymology of the word commencement, with its Latin roots, to a contemplation of the future viewed with hints of alarm, but borne aloft by vigorous assertions of confidence in the graduates to make the world a better place. A pious sentiment, perhaps in the words of a great or even if anonymous thinker, then releases the assembly to the handing out of diplomas, assuming that all academic requirements and incompletes have been completed and that all bursar bills are paid, and to the loading of extraordinary amounts and types of material possessions into vehicles only barely adequate to the task, and ultimately to a departure from campus to the summer job or real job, if any. Far be it from me, a medievalist by training and one who knows the durability of the blues chord progression, to depart from tradition. Hence the salutation. Grandparents. I begin with you, although it is usual to begin by addressing the graduates of the class of whatever year it happens to be, and then working up or down through parents, grandparents, siblings, other relatives, friends, demon lovers, and everyone else. It seems to me that we should really start as close to the top as we are likely to get, and recognize that without you, the grandparents, we would not be here today. Furthermore, you have a special relationship to the graduates, your grandchildren. This is sometimes said to be because you share a common enemy. Parents, that would be you. Parents, this is a really hard job. You have done truly astonishing things for these kids. You've worried yourselves sick about them at moments, and at other moments you've been happier and prouder at their accomplishments than you could ever have imagined. Nothing can fully prepare one to be a parent. I can only say on the basis of my own experience that neither the worry nor the happiness ever goes away entirely. What changes is the increasing feeling of powerlessness to affect their happiness. But let today be a peak of happiness and pride at what they have accomplished. Some of it, to all appearances, on their own, but always undergirded by the support of every kind that you've given them. Graduates, or about to be graduates if you really did finish up your incompletes, return your library books, and pay your last bursar bill. Congratulations. You have earned, if you really did, etc., a degree from a distinguished institution. No small feat. This has been accompanied by feelings of both triumph and terror, and both great happiness and great sadness. But what to do about it henceforth? Let me skip over all of the ordinary things that you might be thought to have learned, the things that belong roughly in the category of, if you don't stop picking at it, it will never heal. Here I want to talk about the experience, past and then future, of you, the graduates of this particular college, a college devoted to the arts and architecture. The context for your work in this college, and the work that you will do henceforth, is a country with a very short attention span, a fairly strong anti-intellectual streak, and an inclination to value only what can be appreciated in instrumental terms. You will often have heard this expressed with questions such as, "What good is that?" Or, "What are you going to do with that?" What you must struggle against for the rest of your lives is the widespread belief that the arts are the province of the well-to-do, to which they turn after the real work of the day is done. That what really matters and thus justifies investment is what contributes to the gross domestic product, or to the national defense, or to global competitiveness. The arts can and do contribute to all of these things, but that is not why we pursue them. We pursue them because they are inherently valuable and central to life itself, if life is to be made to mean anything of consequence at all. A.R. Ammons, in a long poem titled Garbage, puts the matter this way: art makes life, just as it makes itself, an imitation. Art makes shape, order, meaning, purpose, where there was none or none discernible, none derivable. Life, too, if it is to have meaning, must be made meaningful. If it is to have purpose, its purpose must be divined, invented, manifested, held to. In this light, if I were to try to capture what I believe is most important about your education, something that distinguishes you from the recipients of many other kinds of degrees, I would say it is that you have actually made something. Made, in Ammons' words, shape, order, meaning, purpose where there was none or none discernible. And in doing that, you've made life too. Amid all of the things that you may have taken in, you have actually made a painting, or made a performance of some great work, or made a piece of music, or made a building, or made sense of the making of art and of the making of lives. In doing these things, you have asserted your own humanity through an impulse that binds you to the entire history of human aspirations. I do not mean by this that every one of you is a mad genius who will be remembered for all of time as such. We still labor too much under Romanticism's view of the artist, perpetuated in grade B movies, as the person of cosmic talent beyond reason and ultimately unintelligible to ordinary people. Those of you in the architecture department will surely remember that Vitruvius wrote that the, quote, architect's expertise is born both of practice and reasoning, and that architects must master both practical manual skills as well as theory. Vitruvius is worth dwelling on a bit, for though writing about architecture around 30 BC, his views have analogs in all of the arts. He writes, quote, "For neither native talent without learning, nor learning without native talent create the master craftsman. To be educated, you must be an experienced draftsman, well-versed in geometry, familiar with history, a diligent student of philosophy, know music, have some acquaintance with medicine, understand the rulings of legal experts, and have a clear grasp of astronomy and the ways of heaven." Well, perhaps the distribution requirements in this and other colleges do not quite live up to the letter of Vitruvius's prescriptions, but one gets the idea. Making and thinking are not unrelated activities. Your talent as a maker ought to be informed by the range and depth of your thinking. One more point from Vitruvius. Your values as a human being and your appreciation of other human beings, even or especially those very different from yourself, ought to be of a piece with your life as an artist. Vitruvius writes, "Philosophy completes the architect's character by instilling loftiness of spirit, so that he will not be arrogant, but rather tolerant, fair, and trustworthy, and most important all, free from greed. For there is no work that can truly be done without honesty and disinterestedness. Just think if I tried to say that in Latin. Of course, I don't suppose any of us knows any arrogant architects or other artists of any kind. Having said something about your formation and the genuine accomplishment of actually making meaning, I come now to the point at which I speak about the future. I shall judiciously blend concern and confidence, as tradition requires. Look around you. We do not in this country take the arts seriously enough. There is no excuse for the fact that much of what we see and hear around us is terrible. It is not for want of talented people, young and old as well. Surely the American people do not demand mediocrity or worse in architecture and design or in the media, though that is often what they get. Fewer and fewer people are watching network television, and the solution to that problem seems to be to make it still worse. I have often wondered why it is that Italians get to have good-looking coffee pots and we don't. Maybe that's because they insist on better coffee than we do, but that's a matter for another college at Penn State. Many forces conspire against the arts, but here again, we must resist a worn-out romanticism that would have us believe that it must always be so, and that the arts only flourish in adversity. Instead, you must all rise to a very substantial challenge, and indeed to a very weighty responsibility. If there is to be art worthy of notice, you will produce it. And it will be produced by energy and imagination and not by whining. Ammons has several recommendations. 1, don't complain. Ills are sufficiently clear without reiterated descriptions. 2, count your blessings, spelling them over and over into sharp contemplation. 3, do what you can. Take action. 4, move on. Keep the mind allied with the figurations of ongoing. Remember, too, the power of art. Ammons describes its means to, quote, combine thinking and feeling, imagination and movement, and to make the point reason couldn't, the point delivered below the level of argument straight into the fat of feeling. The responsibility entailed is to speak in our behalf to those who come after us. 100 years from now, if we have not suffocated or otherwise destroyed ourselves, people interested in the early 21st century will be more interested in our arts, broadly speaking, than in anything else about us. And 1,000 years from now, you will, more than anyone, have left the trace of who we were. You, as makers of art and buildings, along with those who make the art of imaginative literature, will have left the primary evidence of what we valued and what kind of people we were. I would like the future to think well of us, and you will be the people to determine whether they do. Here again, I do not mean that each and every one of you will be the artist whose work emerges from some excavation as the proof of how enlightened we were. I mean to say that art and artists, too, have a cumulative effect. We all understand that science is a progression of individuals who contribute to a cumulative accomplishment. But we should understand as well that even though probably more individual artists transcend their own times than do scientists, and without invoking any notion of progress in the arts do embody at any moment an accumulation of the energies and imaginations of all that has preceded. The arts do not come blindly out of nowhere. Rather, they are at any moment the gathering up of the strands of humankind's relentless desire to make sense of life and to make form and meaning, as Ammons says, where there was none or none discernible. So it all rides on you, more perhaps than on the graduates of any other college at Penn State. Not on whether the GDP rises or falls at any moment, not on whether the defense budget rises or falls at any moment, not on whether the US of A remains the world's dominant economic or military power. What rides on you is whether we contribute to the struggle to make life meaningful beyond the bare necessities and whether we have left behind vigorous testimony to our belief in the importance of our own creative spirit. Now, of course, you do need to get a job so as to buy your groceries. Your parents are worried about this, and so are your grandparents. Some of you may, in fact, earn a handsome living without ever working for someone else. But each and every one of you can bring to whatever you do the will of the artist to make form and meaning, quote, where there was none or none discernible. It is, after all, that quality of mind, if only the business school students understood it, the essential quality of the entrepreneur. But it is what makes love more than just sex. It is what makes being a parent more than being only a daycare provider. Love is the greatest work of art that any of you will ever work on. Like any significant work of art, it takes not just mad inspiration, but also reason and discipline and hard work. For many of you, this will lead to bringing another life into the world. This will, for a start, be the biggest economic decision that you will ever make, if you consider the claim on the planet's resources of a life of the kind you will expect your child to live. But everything about your formation as an artist bears directly on this new young life. No work that you create will be more important in making the world a better and more beautiful place than will your nurturing of your child with your commitment to the place of art, broadly and properly understood in any kind of life that one could possibly want to live. I've now come to the time for the pious conclusion. I will spare you the Latin origin of the word pious and its uses in classical antiquity. You get the idea. But pious doesn't mean vaporous or irrelevant. It entails respect. Respect for something beyond oneself, whether or not supernatural. What I want you to respect, then, is the great history of artists of whatever level of accomplishment who have preceded you, and the history that you will now create, which will be read by everyone who comes after us. At the same time, I do want you to be happy. Aristotle says that the goal of life is happiness. But he's careful to distinguish this from pleasure, and he asserts that the happiness in the highest sense derives from the contemplative life. The happiness that I want for you, then, is perfectly consistent with all that I want for you as artists, to know what it is to make meaning in the face of meaninglessness. With happiness appropriately defined, I leave you with these words, again by A.R. Ammons. May happiness pursue you, catch you often, and if it should lose you, be waiting ahead making a clearing for you. Good luck and Godspeed.